Hi, I'm Sara.
And I'm Rena, and welcome to
Biopic, a podcast story. This is a podcast where we dissect the good, bad, ugly, and absurd of this specific genre of motion picture, the biopic. If you want to learn more about us, our scoring system, and how we choose movies, please check out our special introductory episode, Introduction, Who Are We and What Are We Doing?
Sara. What movie are we talking about today?
This week we will be talking about the death of Stalin. And Rena, can you give us the trigger warning? Yeah, take a breath. Right now, it looks like you are taking a very long drink of seltzer before you get started here. And it's clearly very necessary. This list is voluminous.
Trigger warning. This movie contains depictions of and/or references to dictators, genocide, mass murder, death, alcoholism, totalitarian governments, vodka, urine, the USSR, communism, Marxism, the Kremlin, strokes, funerals, suicide, toxic workplace environments, pratfalls, dysfunctional families, nepotism, gaslighting, gulags, torture, sociopathy, prison, very cold weather, child abuse, police brutality, secret police, rioting, end-of-life decision-making, poor end-of-life decision-making, classical music, Russia, Russians, the Russian language, the military, kangaroo courts, tribunals, propaganda, anti-Semitism, execution, persecution, ice hockey, and the KGB. Also plane crashes.
I was just about to say, did you get the plane crashes?
Spoiler warning. We are going to spoil everything, including possibly the major plot points in works of narrative art having nothing to do with this particular movie. Consider yourself warned.
Some of the sources used in this episode include Behind the Bastards. They did several episodes related to Joseph Stalin and his henchmen that are excellent. Real Dictators episodes on Joseph Stalin. Rena has read the graphic novel upon which this film is based.
The graphic novel is a graphic novel and should really not be considered a source, given that the central tale that it uses in order to have a sympathetic person at the center of this is based on something that happened 9 years before Stalin died.
Okay. Character sketch on Khrushchev from a CIA memoranda prepared for President Kennedy in 1961 that was declassified in 1976 and is now available through the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library, and we will link to that in our show notes. The book The Last Days of Stalin by Joshua Rubinstein, and then an article from Slate about what is fact and fiction in the death of Stalin, and then the book Stalin's Daughter, The Extraordinary and Tumultuous Life of Svetlana Alliluyeva. You know how to pronounce that one?
I am as hopeless on Russian pronunciations as you are. The book is by Rosemary Sullivan, and I think the closest I'll get to it is Svetlana Alliluyeva, which is probably not how you say her name.
You're much closer than I was.
Yeah, we should watch Dr. Zhivago again so we can learn to pronounce things in Russian.
I will watch Dr. Zhivago again because one Omar Sharif is the star. Yes.
So, Sara, before we begin, there is an actor in this movie who was canceled. There are also at least 24 other actors in the movie who have not been canceled, and their work deserves to be seen. Can you please tell us which actor was canceled and why, in order to get this business with over now, so that while holding this in the back of our heads, we can go ahead and otherwise enjoy making a podcast about a movie we enjoyed immensely, which we are able to do because we are adults, capable of a sense of nuance and balance, who do not need to see everything in black and white or toss out the baby with the bathwater.
Indeed. Our canceled actor is the actor Jeffrey Tambor, who is brilliant in this and has been brilliant in a number of roles, including as George and his twin brother Oscar Bass on Arrested Development, and Maura Pfefferman on Transparent. While working on Transparent, he was accused of sexual misconduct by 3 different women. He would also later admit to having what he called anger issues at work, which was notably experienced by Jessica Walters on the set of Arrested Development, which disturbingly she discussed in a New York Times roundtable interview with the cast of the show. He screamed at Jessica Walters. And everyone just kind of let it just sort of started making excuses for him instead of acknowledging that screaming at someone in the workplace, even if you are a famous actor, is wildly inappropriate. And I just want to again say that maybe it's not the most conventional of workplaces, but a film set is a place of business and people should be professional on it. And we should not make allowances for people to be monsters.
Jeffrey Tambor should make a movie with James Franco and Jared Leto, and I'm leaving out Kevin Spacey because out of the four, he's definitely the one who never deserves to work again. I am hurting in my heart for Jessica Walter at what Jeffrey Tambor did to her, because I remember saying once posting that when I get old, I want to be just like Lucille Bluth or Mallory Archer. And then Maggie Sirota, our guest from the 24-Hour Party People episode, posted at me. So basically, you want to be a Jessica Walter character. And yes, her characters are my messed up vision board for who I would want to be as an old person.
I would love to be Lucille Bluth.
Yeah, just the brassy, gets away economically with being drunk a bunch of the time, still thin, perfectly dressed, somewhat powerful. I'm seeing all the positive here, but I think Mallory Archer even more so than Lucille Bluth.
She's another actor, too, who made a later in life turn to comedy that worked out flawlessly for her.
Yes, Sarah, can you please tell us a little bit about the movie The Death of Stalin?
Death of Stalin is a 2017 political satire black comedy film written and directed by Armando Iannucci and co-written by David Schneider and Ian Martin with Peter Fellows. It is based on the French graphic novel La Mort de Stalin, which came out in between 2010 and 2012. The film depicts the internal social and political power struggle among the members of the Soviet Politburo following the death of leader Joseph Stalin in 1953. If you are not familiar, Armando Iannucci is the creator of Veep and the British series In the Thick of It, and then later the film In the Loop. He was described as the hard man of political satire by the Daily Telegraph. It totally makes sense that he made this. He is so gifted at merging pathos and humor and really combining absurdity with tragedy. This fits right in to that and manages to flawlessly tonally toe the line of those two things and dip in and out of both of them. This movie was what I think the kids call a modest hit. It had a $13 million budget. It made $29 million at the box office. One place it was not a hit was Russia, where it was seen as anti-Russian propaganda, and it was banned there, as well as Kazakhstan for allegedly mocking the Soviet Union and its past.
And Sarah, can you please tell us a little bit about Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, who I fucking hate? He was a horrible person, and I hope he's in hell.
He probably is, and who better to talk about Joseph Stalin than a person who spent the entire 4 years she was at college painting and repainting a theater instead of doing any actual schoolwork. Joseph Stalin was born December 6, 1878. He died on March 5th, 1953. He was a Soviet politician and revolutionary who led the Soviet Union from 1924 until his death in 1953. He held office as General Secretary of the Communist Party from 1922 to 1952, and as premier from 1941 until his death. He, of course, succeeded Lenin, and he kind of made a shit show out of things. That's all from our friends at Wikipedia. A piece of interesting trivia here that will come in handy later. He was appointed to plan Lenin's funeral when Lenin died. Despite initially governing the country as part of a collective leadership, he eventually consolidated power to become a dictator by the 1930s. Stalin codified the party's official interpretation of Marxism as Marxism-Leninism, and his version of it was referred to as Stalinism. Yes, Stalin is, of course, kind of a towering figure, and you've asked the wrong author of 2 papers about Valley of the Dolls to fill in the blanks here, so I'm just going to throw out a couple of superlatives and things that I found interesting. So he was very famous for 5-year plans that didn't work. He committed his very first, quote, terrorization of his own people, wouldn't be the last, in 1930 by putting a ton of his own citizens, known as the kulaks. Yes.
The kulaks were peasants who had more than 8 acres of land each, and Stalin felt that they needed to be starved out of existence. Over time, he killed at least 10 million of his own people. He sucks. I hate him.
Yes, and he killed somewhere between 5 and 7 million of them in a famine of his very own in 1932.
People just burned their stuff and ate their own animals because they figured that that was better than letting the state take them.
Before he put the kulaks in gulags and concentration camps, he did force them to give all of their grain over to the collective. On top of that famine, he killed and imprisoned countless scores of his own people for reasons. Before we get all, hey, Stalin was amazing during World War II, though, I want to just preface by saying he did admire Hitler, particularly Hitler's work in The Night of the Long Knives. And he did attempt to join the Axis powers at one point in the lead up to like the formal World War II. But JK can't trust Hitler, and Hitler invaded Russia. But what Hitler didn't realize was that Stalin could out-crazy him, because Stalin was happy to starve his own people and bomb his own buildings and infrastructure to keep the Germans from getting to it.
Yeah, Stalin was not doing anything to make the world safe for democracy.
No, he was Times Man of the Year, though, in 1943. He had like a good overseas propaganda machine because we didn't, from what I can tell, hate him. So another couple of things, the historian Robert Conquest stated that Stalin perhaps determined the course of the 20th century more than any other individual. And it plays out. Smart kids used to say that Stalin killed 20 million of his own people. The reality is that it's probably far less than that. You said it about 10 million. But I, as a PR professional, can't find a way to polish the turd of killing maybe 10 million instead of 20 million of your own people while deporting and imprisoning countless others. I'm going to go ahead and describe his legacy as a mixed bag. He was, however, very handsome when he was young.
Yeah, if you go back to our Frida episode, we do a Would You Hook Up with This Dictator? Where we agreed that the young Stalin was extremely handsome and he was probably the guy who would neg on you in Sociology 101.
I would agree that he would completely neg on you.
I did do research this week that I'll be bringing in, but I was too depressed to write the bio. Because researching Stalin is really depressing. So I was too depressed to write anything about him.
I want to stress here how uneducated I am on this topic. But my takeaway is that he believed in his stuff, but he was also an opportunist. So that's my story. Fortunately, we don't know anything about like what it's like to have a crazy dictator.
So while reading about Stalin in preparing for this episode, I learned that on top of every other shitty thing about him, like killing over 10 million of his own people, he was a shitty grandfather who didn't meet his daughter Svetlana's son until he was 4 and only saw him twice after that, and refused to meet his Jewish son-in-law.
Well, babies are, to be fair, not very interesting. They do just kind of sit there, but he did miss out on some of the cutest years.
Yeah. Yeah, and Simon Montefiore wrote two very good books about Stalin that will just leave you absolutely incredulous at how crazy his life was.
But I think let's get into it, though, because we loved this movie.
So it's speculated with some plausible documentation that Stalin had a few mini strokes in the 10 years or so leading up to this. Stalin had untreated hypertension. One of the things he did to try to improve his health was to drink water with drops of iodine in it. I don't know what that would do to fix any unhealthy old manism that he was suffering from, but whatevs. So we open on a beautiful woman in blue playing the piano. She's playing classical music, Mozart, and we are in a sort of brutalist looking hall. And we go into the booth, and welcome back to the show, Patty Considine.
Yes, indeed. And also, this beautiful woman is the actress Olga Kurylenko. She was in Quantum of Solace, and she's been in a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, Patty is in a recording booth, and he is taking a call and frantically taking a note because it is the general secretary, and that would be Stalin. He's freaking out because it is a call from a maniacal leader who will send you somewhere if you get this wrong. Like, that's just kind of like the game that Stalin is playing at this point.
If you want someone to portray workplace frustration to a T, get Patty Considine.
Indeed. I always like watching people do the fun dance of being in the employ of a maniac. Like it really soothes my need for like trauma bonding, even if it's with just characters in a film. Because I've been in the employ of a maniac before. It is stuff like this where you're trying to translate, like, well, what did they actually mean by that? Why did they say it like that? What did they intend to say? Am I going to get killed? We cut back to Stalin's house and enter Steve Buscemi playing Nikita Khrushchev. And
Not a casting I ever would have thought of.
No, but brilliant. And Stalin's on the phone making a list. It sounds like he's planning a party, but what he's actually doing is making a list of people he's going to kill or arrest. Also enter into the room Jeffrey Tambor as his... I can't figure out the Soviet power structure to save my life.
And we'll just call him his undercommie.
He's his second in command.
And it's clear he put this guy out because he was dumb and easy to blame things on if something went wrong and he needed to purge.
He's quite brilliant in this movie. He's perfect in this part. Then enter to the table also Simon Russell Beale.
They're telling these puerile, juvenile jokes, and this is like Stalin would hold drinking parties that would go on into the AM and then make everyone watch Westerns with him, and then he would insist on DJing.
We don't have any leaders who make people stay up all night answering their stupid questions and listening to Phantom of the Opera. How strange this must seem to people.
Yeah, Stalin didn't like being alone, so if you were one of his henchmen, you had to party with him until 5 a.m, and then he would pass out and wake up again around 11. And normally a leader who sleeps in is a person after my own heart, because all the worst people I've ever known have been super hyped about being morning people. And hey, Churchill also drank a lot and slept in late. This isn't necessarily the main thing that makes someone worthwhile. I'd suppose I'd rather put up with a morning person than put up with knowing Joseph Stalin. It's a hard choice. Anyway, the thing is, they're all 60 or 70 now, so these men were having to deal with Stalin insisting that they party like 20-year-olds when their bodies could not take it.
I find this like late stage dictator making everyone party with them thing, like thanks to having Ryan and Estrada on the show to talk about South Korea, like this is a through line of their end of life behavior is like you can't leave them alone. And you need to like stay with them all the time and, you know, and co-sign on their bad behavior. I will also always find it endlessly fascinating that people can do any job when they drink this way.
What you see, one of the things you see here is that they smash tomatoes on each other or put tomatoes in each other's clothing. And this was a thing that actually happened. Like, they had access to tomatoes in the Russian winter to just smash on each other when people are dying of hunger because of dumb shit they did.
I mean,
Although this is 1953, so let's assume there are fewer people dying of hunger because of dumb shit they did than there were in, like, the 30s.
There are, to your point, fewer people to die. We cut back to the symphony, and poor Patty is still trying to figure out what 17 minutes meant. And Stalin, when he
Is it
calls
17
back,
minutes from when he called? Is it 17 minutes from now? Patty Considine is bugging out and yelling at the other guy in the sound booth with him for eating apples.
yeah, and Stalin, when he calls back, he wants a recording of the performance, which they have not recorded. So there is an entire sequence of panic wherein Patty has to regather many people.
They find the nearest conductor in Moscow that they can find, and you see this guy and his wife are an adorable old couple. And you also see, like, purge roundups going on, including one scene of a son pointing out his father, which we'll circle back to later. But yeah, like, children were taught to turn their parents in to the state. Like, you weren't supposed to love your family, you were supposed to love the state. This conductor, who is not the man whose son pointed him out, just to be clear, you see him, like, telling his wife, I love you, tell them whatever you have to. And then it turns out that there's a man in a tux saying, we just need you to come conduct this thing. And the reason for this is because the conductor, who was already there, trips and hits his head on something and can't conduct the second version. You see them dragging people in off the street who they then say look like they've never even heard of Mozart, just to show you that, like, class snobbery that snobbery doesn't disappear even when you bring in communism. I don't know. You have to go Khmer Rouge for that, and who wants that?
It definitely didn't work that well.
And they make a decision that I liked, which is to not force everyone to speak the same accent. And so Khrushchev has Steve Buscemi's accent, and Stalin has the British working class accent. So I actually appreciate that they didn't have everyone speak in RP or speak in slight Russian accent, because actually, like, Stalin was from Georgia, and specifically, he was from a place that they saw as a backwater, so it makes sense to give him a working class accent. Russia stretches over how many time zones? It's like 9, 10, 11, I don't know. So it actually makes sense that they'd all have different accents that we wouldn't even be able to perceive if they were attempting to do what various Russian accents sound like in English. So I was okay with this choice.
Well, yeah, it works. It completely works. There's a lot of choices they make that are the kind of choices I love because they are things that shouldn't work that do.
Like, Khrushchev's thing is being, like, earthy salt of the earth, so it makes sense to have him talk like he was born in a New York outer borough in a neighborhood that still hasn't got around to gentrifying.
Buscemi, who is a man who I love, I want to be clear, sounds like he was born under the cyclone.
Yeah. Sarah, I think, is it now or later that we should talk about the imaginary love child that you have with Steve Buscemi, your daughter Lucretia? She has dark shadows under her eyes because she takes after her daddy. She was born with dark shadows under her eyes.
She
You
will
can
die
never
with
tell if
dark
she's
shadows
slept.
under her eyes.
You can never tell if she slept enough. And
But
she's
she is
because
beautiful.
she's such an old soul.
Oh, it's inappropriate no matter where we put it.
Yeah.
There's no getting around how strange it is and how creepy it is that I have this, but I do. And that's that. I would also say here from the film scholarly side of things, this opening sequence is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And it is everything you want to love about movies because it shows and doesn't tell. And it uses this situation, which you have pointed out happened a decade before this, before this incident.
So the story on this thing where they have to drag everyone back to the studio afterwards because the thing wasn't recorded is something that may have happened 9 years earlier, and it's taken from a memoir of Shostakovich that may or may not be true. The jury is also out on whether this memoir is real.
It shows you everything you need to know about what things were like in Russia under late stage Stalin, and manages to combine the absurdity of things with like the utter tragedy, as you pointed out. It sets the stage for everything we need to know about where things are and what this world is like very quickly and efficiently, and it gives us all the information.
They capture just the crassness of the humor. And it's like, this is not a sexy party. It's like a bunch of old men in bad shape getting drunk together. And there's this one moment where you see Khrushchev and Beria jumping into the air and bumping tummies with each other in slow-mo, and they look like Teletubbies. The pianist Maria Udina is a badass who suffered a lot. She was like homeless for a couple years because she refused to renounce her Judaism.
Do you think like in 70 years someone will make a comedy of what we're going through now and it'll be fun, and someone will have a podcast where they'll be like, can you believe these people live this way?
Of course not, Sarah. Everything's fine. Nothing's wrong. What are you talking about?
I know. They also have a toast to John Wayne and John Ford, which I'm like, please don't.
Were other Russians even allowed to see these movies?
Probably not. They elevated the West. I can't imagine that they would be allowed to just get American entertainment. It was a big deal when Billy Joel went over there in the late 80s. I can't imagine they would allow people to indulge in American entertainment unfettered.
Milos Forman told a story about growing up in Czechoslovakia. They wanted to show a movie that showed this is how terrible the West is. So they showed 12 Angry Men because it was like, oh, they're all angry. And there were lines around the block to see it. And what people actually thought was, wait, they're having a trial by jury, and the jury is like just is making actual deliberations. What is this? This movie room where Stalin and his henchmen sit around watching John Ford movies was part of a second floor that Stalin built in his dacha with the expectation that his daughter and her husband and children would move in. This being the husband who was not a Jew. And when they didn't, he turned it into a movie room.
When Khrushchev gets home from his night of hard partying, he has his wife write down everything that he said during the night that he can remember, so he knows what he talked about the night before, which is pretty brilliant. And like, I would say that this is Al-Anon behavior, but this is a fight to survive.
Yeah, they're all just trying to survive. Like, he even gives it to... it's a really nice gesture of his to tell one of the other henchmen, because I guess Jeffrey Tambor brought up the name of someone who was killed in a purge, and then they make fun of him like, oh, why don't you talk about Trotsky? And, like, Khrushchev tells him helpfully, just, like, have your wife write down everything you said so you don't get in trouble for it tomorrow, like, so you know what you're going into the meeting with at, like, noon tomorrow when we have to be back here. And we see Maria slips a note telling Stalin off into this record that has been pressed, and she and Patty Considine are fighting over it, and she's not afraid to die.
I thought this was kind of uncool, though, too, because she might not be afraid to die, but obviously Patty Considine doesn't want to die.
And Patty Considine is so good at playing fear.
It's anybody's guess what is going to happen to you. He's part of the chain of custody of this record.
And I guess this story with her is essential because it gives us someone who's pure and sympathetic, since everyone else who this film focuses on, I guess we sympathize with Khrushchev because What we know from history is that he's possibly the least awful of them, or that's how it's been written down. But we need someone who isn't possibly responsible for the deaths of thousands of people to latch on to.
Yes.
Or where our sympathy isn't based in them being better than Beria, who was a pedophile and a torturer and, again, responsible for untold deaths. I also noted that all of the decor feels simultaneously harsh, brutal, ponderous, and dingy at the same time. When they go into Khrushchev's apartment, I'm like, that's where one of the top 7 or so guys lives, that dump. And it's all ugly. And say what you will about the czars, but they were fantastic interior decorators.
They were. Yeah, like they hand over the album and Stalin has like some sort of Miranda Priestley vibes. If Miranda Priestley was a murderous dictator, um, in terms of like the demands and how he treats people. He gets the album, he sees the note fall out, he picks it up off the floor, starts laughing at it, and then falls on the floor and pisses himself.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's laughing at her audacity or.
I mean, a lot of bad things are funny when you're drunk, I hear.
From the jokes that they're telling, which are not funny.
Yeah. I mean, he could think it's a prank for all we know in that moment.
There's this moment where they're talking about throwing grenades and making prisoners jump around to catch them for like exercise to get warm in Stalingrad. And this is Khrushchev. It's just reminding you who they are from the beginning. And I don't know. Yeah, I guess I like Khrushchev for making JFK look good.
You pointed out here that famous and powerful people are likely to receive less effective medical care because the people caring for them are either afraid they'll fuck it up or they will want to try and use experimental treatments that might kill the person to try and save them. Stalin's got 2 guards outside the door who are too afraid to intervene because they live in such terror that they don't want to address the noises they're hearing in the room without being invited in. He's terrorized his people to the tune of no one is going to rescue him when he is dying.
In a puddle of urine.
Good job, guy.
We see the servant comes in with breakfast, and this old woman with the breakfast tray is probably the only person in the film who's sorry that Stalin is dead.
This is not a good situation for anyone because the irony of all of these people trying to be like a collective one when they're all being pitted against each other at all times is going to keep that from ever manifesting itself. And we break into a forced interrogation that Beria is hosting to let him know that Stalin is unwell.
And Beria is terrifying. Simon Russell Beale is always so good, and I saw him in the Lehman trilogy at the Park Avenue Armory years ago, and he was amazing. It was like 5 hours of 3 men, and it flew by so quickly.
He's very good in this. I did a little tiny bit of research about Beria. He was a notorious sexual predator. Sometimes he would just be driven around Moscow searching for victims to assault. And after he finished with his victims, they were routinely offered a bunch of flowers. To accept was to imply that whatever had just happened was consensual, and to refuse could lead to arrest, torture, and disappearance.
It's got to be the most emotionally expensive bundle of flowers ever.
It's totally repulsive. Here he alludes to this by talking about how he gets tons of sex because of wives who are desperate to get their husbands released from vague imprisonment. And we cut back to Khrushchev's where his wife is reading back her notes from the evening before, and he is like asking follow-up questions because he doesn't understand what he said.
She's reading off Molotov, and he's like, no, that's Molotov, like the kill gesture.
This is an exhausting life that these people lead, and he finds out and is dispatched to Stalin's house as well. And we see that Beria has gotten there first, and he is going through papers on Stalin's desk. We don't know what these papers are, but he's taking stuff. We see that when a government is highly dysfunctional, um, everyone scrambles like maniacs to cover their own asses and grapple with a power vacuum. This is a good moment to shout out that lines of succession and post-death paperwork are very important.
The thing with a line of succession is you're determining who's likeliest to kill you. But I do love the breakfast table Khrushchevs.
Yes. I wouldn't mind watching like a whole series of the Khrushchevs at breakfast.
Well, I'm imagining that managing Khrushchev is a full-time career.
Oh,
I'd
for
imagine
sure.
that managing any of these men is a full-time career.
Yeah.
And then Khrushchev has come in such a hurry that he only put like his suit pants and jacket on over his pajamas. And there's this great sequence of everyone running in, smelling, reacting, and then realizing that their reaction is being watched, so then putting in a performance. Jeffrey Tambor shows constant panic, and you see him get a glow up over the course of the movie that is sort of ridiculous.
What had happened was there was an event called the Doctor's Plot, which was a campaign in 1952 and 1953 that accused doctors of Jewish ancestry of conspiring to assassinate Soviet leaders. So all of the doctors who are good at their jobs are imprisoned or exiled from the country. Um, you know, these are how these things fall apart.
Yeah, and of course, they go for that least creative but ever popular scapegoat, blaming the Jews. And to quote Tevye, I get it, we're the chosen people, but could you please choose someone else for a change?
And they're also talking about how they need a quorum to determine what they should do because they don't want to make any decisions unilaterally without everyone else on board about moving him to a bed. As the other ministers are arriving, they determine they should move him to a bed. And you've got a bunch of old men playing light as a feather, stiff as a board with Stalin's body.
They're
Yes.
all in terrible shape. They all get 5 hours of sleep and drink till 5 in the morning every night. Yeah, so the dialogue in this is fantastic from start to finish.
Yes.
Like, every
Yes.
line of it.
They ultimately they get him in the bed and Tambor is like, see, we're better as a committee. And they're trying to figure out what the line of succession is, and it's very chaotic. And this reminds me of that time that, and I've only seen it on video, I am not this old, that Alexander Haig said he was in charge of America while Reagan was assassinated and undergoing surgery. I don't know where Papa Bush was, but he wasn't in DC. So Alexander Haig was the Secretary of State, which is not third in line of succession. But he was
No,
just
they
like,
weren't they supposed to call Tip O'Neill at that point?
yeah, um,
Yeah.
I'm in charge here now. They're all kind of like figuring that out. And Beria whispers to corpse like Stalin, like, I got this for you, essentially.
And you sort of see Khrushchev in, like, blurred out, you sort of see Khrushchev witnessing this, still
Yeah.
in PJs.
Yeah. And Khrushchev is pretty darn smart. And then Svetlana, his daughter, arrives, played by Andrea Riseborough.
We last saw Andrea Riseborough in Battle of the Sexes. I refer as vanilla pudding throughout the episode.
You did. You did. But she's wonderful in this. And all the council runs to her to try and curry favor with her. She seems very competent and lovely,
But she
albeit
also
like,
has her eccentricities. Like, there's a point where she's like, "Why aren't there herbs growing here? Do people not grow herbs anymore? Do they just eat weeds?"
everyone's in this game of brinksmanship of like the meta. How should I be acting when people are watching me?
Yeah, because everybody is aware they're constantly being watched, which means no relationship with anyone means a goddamn thing because everyone is constantly afraid for their life. They go out to try to find doctors. There's this one old doctor who I guess was retired and thus too old for anyone to think of to purge him. And he sees people coming for him. And I'm like, does this old doctor really think he can run? He fails. They catch up with him and his poor dog is left wandering around Moscow.
I hope someone got the dog. But
Me
yeah,
too.
They bring him, and we're also trying to track down Stalin's son, and we find him at an ice rink. Um, and someone is someone is asking, when we play Hungary, are we allowed to use guns? And
Oh
we find out
gosh.
that he is retraining a hockey team because a plane crash has killed the original hockey team. Although, as is said in this film, Russian planes don't crash.
Well, he told the plane to take off in an ice storm, so they're all dead, and he's worried about getting blamed. The name of Stalin's son is Vasily, and Vasily is a failson, which I will get into in a minute. But his idea of coaching the national ice hockey team is play better, hit it, give it, hit it, give it. Play better, you clattering fanny.
This sounds like what I sound like when I go to a sporting event.
Here's something about what a total failson Stalin's son is. This is from Joshua Rubinstein. Soviet newspapers liked to claim that Vasily Stalin had served with distinction as a jet fighter pilot during World War II, flying 24 sorties against the Germans and shooting down enemy planes. Whether or not the tales of his heroics were true, and it is doubtful that they were, he rose nimbly through the ranks after the war, benefiting from his paternal connection. Vasily became commander of the Air Force in the Moscow Military District in 1948, and prominent enough to be featured on the cover of Time on August 20th of 1951, recognized as a lieutenant general and his father's little watchman. Perhaps the editors were speculating that Vasily would succeed his father. It is unclear whether Stalin ever had such plans for his son. Stalin would also scold him mercilessly, especially on one occasion when he learned that Vasily's method of fishing on a trip to Poland was to throw hand grenades into the water. Vasily held this post until the summer of 1952, when he was dismissed because of an accident during the May Day parade. Against the orders of his superiors, he had insisted that the Air Force proceed with the flyby even though the weather was too windy and overcast. The pilots could not stay in formation, and their planes nearly brushed the spires of the Historical Museum in Red Square. Stalin himself signed the order, removing him from his august position.
Damn, that is a failson.
Yeah, using hand grenades to go fishing.
That's next level.
How does that even result in you getting fish?
I mean, you kill a bunch of fish.
Yeah, but how do you eat them upon killing them? Do you do like bits of the fish fly in the air from the grenade and maybe land in your mouth? Is this a very inefficient way to make sushi?
I don't know about its efficiency, but I think there probably are some fish that don't make it to the surface intact, but probably plenty do. They all float up to the top, and then you can get out a net. I don't know much about fishing. Vasily is played really brilliantly by Rupert Friend, who is just wonderful in this role. He's really great.
Yeah.
And plays his hysteria really nicely. We come back, and Stalin is not doing great. He has had a cerebral hemorrhage. He will not recover. The chairmen start fighting over kind of who's demonstrably the saddest. Bering orders Moscow to be cut off, which is how they also did that during Chernobyl. You cut off the information sources so you can decide what the line is going to be, because Stalin is dead.
Yay! He sort of comes back for 1 minute and points, and then they go into this crazy floral language speculation of what he means by pointing at a painting of like a peasant and a lamb.
Meanwhile, Khrushchev gets caught by Svetlana going through Stalin's office, and Khrushchev promises to make sure that Svetlana is protected, and she freaks out because she's like, why do I need to be protected? And we find out later why she needs to be protected, because we see that everybody's going to go with you when you die.
She has developed some survival skills and means of keeping people on their toes herself, probably from being Stalin's daughter. I love her yelling at the doctors, "You're dead, you're a baby, you're out of it," right? Because they're all really old or really young. And then the autopsy has to happen.
Oh my
So
God. Jeffrey Tambor has some really great lines in here.
Mhm.
Including, "I'm sorry, boss, I wish I could take it for you."
As they're
He has
cutting open his skull.
Yeah, he has such a strong skull. So he enters here and he's furious to see his father being cut up. And he also delivers an insult that I love to one of them, which was, "You're made mostly from hair," which is random and delightful.
In their big black car, but we get into a case of bumper cars with them moving out. I also wanted to say the music in this film is excellent.
And they start like emptying the house of the staff and stealing and looting the
There's a little
soldiers.
Sorry, there's a little note that I love here where part of the staff being expelled is you see a couple Stalin lookalikes and someone's like, yeah, that guy's out of a job.
They're removing the staff to go God knows where. And the soldiers are kind of destroying everything in the house because regime change. And they're supposed to be in a mourning period, but Beria has decided to busy himself with freeing some previous arrestees.
It isn't that Beria believes in reform, it's that he understands that people will like you if you free prisoners. So at one point around here we see one of the men who'd been shown being arrested, being released, and he walks in and hugs his wife, and then you see him like glaring at the son who turned him in because socialism sucks. And you see Beria let Mrs. Molotov out because he wants an in with Molotov. Khrushchev goes over to Molotov's house and you see him flushing the toilet so that they can talk to each other. And Beria turns up with Mrs. Molotov, who walks in as they're bad-mouthing her.
Yeah, Molotov is saying like, "Oh, she was a traitor," and then here she is, she's back, and he's grateful to see her now because he finds out it was all a mistake. We're also seeing that they're trying to ready Jeffrey Tambor for the role of dictator, chairman, whatever, secretary of the Communist Party, and they've given him a little bit of a glow up.
Yeah, his hair keeps getting darker and more uniform in sheen. He's wearing a corset, which he said is like just meant for support.
Yes, it's for back support. They have a meeting where they're starting to talk through all of the proposals and what's happening next. And they assign Khrushchev to organize the funeral, which, as I mentioned, Stalin was in charge of organizing Lenin's funeral.
Well, I don't think that's what was on Beria's mind. He's
No.
trying to stick Khrushchev with the least important job so he can find a way to phase him out. And it's also
Yeah.
not a job that Khrushchev is at all cut out for.
Not at all. There's like this bananas amount of like double speak going on, and this fight to decide whether or not to keep Stalin's arrests active or start their whole new own set of arrests. We come back and the funeral is happening, and it's very curtainy and stage spectacular and performative, not unlike some other memorial services that we've seen recently in our greater public sphere. Maria is back to play the piano at this funeral, and enter Jason Isaac as Field Marshal Zhukov. He's essentially the head of the Russian army, is what that title means. During the funeral, Svetlana goes to Beria and says, like, "You brought Molotov's wife back. Can you bring Alexei, her lover, back?"
A note on Alexei, he was a noted movie director. They met when she was 16 and he was 22 years older than her and had been married. But he gets shipped off to the Gulag. In real life, he lives. He comes back to Moscow when he isn't supposed to and gets shipped off again. But at one point, he does resume his affair with Svetlana. I don't know why they kill him off here, I guess just to make a point.
They're trying to stage this photograph of, I believe it was Stalin posed for this photo with this little girl at one point, and Tambor wants to recreate this photo and doesn't seem to grasp the concept that this little girl is probably older or dead.
He doesn't realize that the girl in the photo is either grown up or didn't get to grow up. They bring in little girls who look like her, and he's like, no, I want that little girl. And it's so clear which way this is going to go. And he has so much fun with equivocating in the sentences. Like, there's a point where he says, no problem. And then he says, did I say, I meant it like, no problem.
And I think at this point, too, we find out that Khrushchev is in a relationship with Maria. I don't know whether or not, is this true?
I don't think so. There's nothing about it I could see from what I could find on her. I do it like they just say that she plays piano for his niece and he has some sort of at least flirtation with her. It's implied that there's more, and that's why he brings her in to play piano, not knowing anything about this note. And it seems like it could be very, very bad for him. If she has to pick any of these guys to be sleeping with for survival or whatnot, it might as well be Khrushchev. He comes across as the least horrible of them. He's probably still sexy to you, even in this, like, fat suit with his head shaved.
Buscemi is always beautiful. And I am not taking comments on that. That's settled science. And if you need to prove it out yourself, Google a picture of him when he was young and with the FDNY, when he was a firefighter for New York.
He was very sexy when he gave that speech at the 9/11 concert at Madison Square Garden, where he talked about having been a fireman. And one of the stories that I know about this is that all of his friends in, like, the starving actor scene thought it was so cool that Buscemi had health insurance from being a fireman.
Well, and also
they were like, oh my God, you get benefits? We have no benefits.
He went back and dug with them.
I think Jason Isaacs is the only man who looks dreamy in this movie.
Yes, he is legitimately dreamy. He is also clearly having the time of his life in this performance.
Oh, yeah.
Trivia I found on the internet. He's loaded down with medals, like just ridiculously medaled up. And in real life, he's actually wearing fewer medals than the real life Zukov wore, because Armando Iannucci thought that the real numbers was too unbelievable. You know, he had a lot of medals for reasons.
Beria mentions Maria's note.
Yes. We're seeing that, like, everyone's trying to, like, look as sad as possible, but no one is actually sad that Stalin is dead. Vasily is making a scene saying that the Americans stole Stalin's brain. And Beria finally silences him by saying, I know about the hockey team.
I mean, who couldn't find out about the hockey team? What a fail son.
He thought that he could somehow keep it from his father.
Yeah, and the, like, play better. Wow.
Yeah. It's
That's
bad
not coaching.
It's not good coaching. I mean, Vasily is really, like, rolling out the medical conspiracy theories. Then Zukov kicks him. And Vasily also announces that he wants to make a speech at the funeral. And Khrushchev's certainly, I'm guessing he didn't actually say this, but maybe he did. Who knows? He's like, well, I want to fuck Grace Kelly. But no, you're not speaking at the funeral.
I wrote down about Maria and Khrushchev. Of course, all these guys cheat on their wives because power. I have to hand it to Maria for knowing to hook up with the one who's closest to decent, which isn't saying much in this crowd. Khrushchev is boiling mad at Beria and lashing out for tactics. So he orders the trains that have been stopped to start moving again into Moscow as the people who are coming to Stalin's funeral are moving forward. The soldiers fire into the crowd, and we later hear it quoted that something like 1,500 people have been shot.
They hurt a lot of people here. Khrushchev, when he finds out about Maria's note, is like, you've put me in a really bad position, because now he's tied to this note because of their relationship, whatever it is. And Khrushchev makes the decision that they're going to They're going to scheme and they're going to blame the unrest on Beria and they're going to make a regime change.
So yes, you mentioned Molotov is played by Michael Palin, and we see he seems like someone. This is the Molotov that the Molotov cocktail is named after, but he seems like a man who is very much beaten up by life and very like. There's this one scene where he's talking about, do we vote for this? Do we not vote for this? And you see all these things that they put into make it causing language to mean nothing. And he is very good here too. So Khrushchev goes and proposes offing Beria to Zhukov, and I love Zhukov really fucks with his head here. Like, he yells at him, "What are you doing suggesting this?" And then you see everything drain out of Buscemi's face where he realizes, oh no,
This is a great moment.
Right, where you see him thinking, I think that he's relying on, like, he survives because he's made the right character judgments, and you see that look in his face of, this is it. And then Zhukov goes, I'm just messing with you. Yeah, let's do him in. It's the best.
And yeah, we've got a plan. No better place to scheme than at a funeral.
I guess it eventually inspiring this movie is still not enough to warrant the horrors of living under a totalitarian dictatorship, specifically a communist totalitarian dictatorship. But boy, is this movie wonderful. I'm just sorry about all the terrible things that had to happen to inspire it.
Yes. Once again, like, we're communicating so much with so little time, and it's economical and smart and moving, and there's so many characters in this movie, but they get a lot across, and it's under 2 hours.
It's so efficient with its storytelling.
There is not a misstep. Vasily does get to make his speech, but as he's about halfway through it, there is a flyover that drowns out the sound.
What I love about Vasily's speech is that for filler, he says that Stalin was that the peoples of the Soviet Union that Stalin was a bear and we are his cubs, and then starts listing the nationalities of all of the cubs of Stalin. So I'm imagining it turning into this It's a Small World ride of Soviet bear cubs with like various different little outfits on them. Latvian cubs, Lithuanian cubs, Georgian cubs, and the planes drown him out.
Totally adorable to imagine, but it is a stupid speech.
Yes, it is. But oh my God, that should have been a tie-in for this movie. Little stuffed bear cubs in like different outfits that look like different parts of the Soviet Union.
I'm here for it. I can't believe they didn't get a McDonald's tie-in.
I know.
Collect all the bears of the Soviet Union from your favorite movie that you went to see with your family this year.
The Death of Stalin. So immediately following this funeral, we're about to go into this big meeting. So we find out from Svetlana that unfortunately Beria could not re-alive her former lover Alexei. The real Alexei lived until 1979. Khrushchev and one of the other henchmen go to meet with Molotov. They get into a car where Molotov sets his dog barking, and I swear this dog looks an awful lot like the old doctor's dog that got left behind in an earlier scene, but I know they previously mentioned before this scene that Molotov already had a dog. Unfortunately, we get no closure on whether that dog found a home again after the doctor got carted off. Maybe it wound up being shot into space. We don't know.
Do you think it's Laikaa?
No, you know what? I think Laikaa was probably barely a puppy at this point.
Oh, adorable little Laikaa.
Molotov finally shows like this moment of being definite because he's just seemed kind of broken the whole film where he's like, yeah, let's do him in.
Yep.
Molotov was a true believer. One of the things that he cites about Bery's treachery here is bringing back Paulina, his wife.
It starts to go down real fast, and like suddenly this movie turns very dark.
Well,
very quickly.
right, because as they're taking down, and in real life, this played out over many, many months. The arrest of Beria doesn't come until June, and Stalin died in March, and Beria actually doesn't die until December. And this makes it something that happens rapidly right after the funeral. Beria has this moment as Beria is falling apart. First, we see Khrushchev telling Malenkov to just shut up and let the people with brains handle things, or to just go along. We see Beria pointing out that all of them have done horrible things. All of them have caused many deaths. All of them have signed execution orders that would be very, very unpopular for long lists of things. And we're reminded none of them are good guys, and that's why we needed the piano player.
Yeah, and I think also this is credit to Simon Russell Beale's performance, that finds he finds the way to empathize with this man who I have just described as a man who rapes and then makes you complicit in your rape by giving you flowers. That's insane behavior. And cruel behavior. But he does manage to make you feel like I did feel bad for him in this moment, because you see him reacting to this betrayal, and it's a very real hurt that he is demonstrating.
I did not feel sorry for him, but I did appreciate watching the fish flailing as it's been caught. He's very, very effective at that. If I already know someone was horrible, I will not I will let myself admire, but I will not let myself feel.
That's fair. That's fair.
I just want to add again, Jason Isaacs is the only man I consider dreamy in this film, although younger Paddy Considine is sort of my type.
Tamber's indignation is duly noted here, and
because you see, Malenkov is weak.
yes,
that's why Stalin positioned him. That's why Beria positioned him, and he's just weak. And the best thing he can do right now is shut up. And then they read off Beria's list of crimes to him. Khrushchev and all of these guys immediately become likable because you see their disgust at what Beria has done, even though they're all guilty of shit too. But you see him reading off all the names and ages of young girls that Beria has raped and the full number of his crimes. They shoot him in the head and burn the body in the courtyard. You hear one of them saying, "I wish the old man were here for this." You don't know that. That's just you project. I'm sure maybe hey, let's kill someone we were hanging out with until a night ago, and shoot them and burn the body in the courtyard together. Maybe that was something that sounds like a fun night out with the boys.
I don't know Joseph Stalin, so I don't know what he was into, but he seemed like he was not a man particularly interested in getting his hands dirty.
No.
Which is why I wouldn't expect that he would be into that. But what do I know? So we're closing off the movie at this point with Nikita Khrushchev taking power. And I would like to say a little bit about Nikita Khrushchev.
What might be interesting is if I read from this CIA report about him that was given to President Kennedy in 1961 and declassified in 1976. So in 1961, the CIA prepared a character sketch on Khrushchev for Kennedy to read. For once, I'm going to trust the CIA. There's some excellent writing here, and I think this was a good use of my grandparents' tax money.
I'm surprised they didn't have to put it in crayon for JFK.
Yeah, they used to not have to put things in crayon or put colorful sketches in it, because we used to have a president who could read entire paragraphs, such as, "When Stalin died in 1953, Khrushchev was largely an unknown quantity outside the Soviet Union, seemingly a lesser-ranking figure than the better-known Molotov, Malenkov, Beria, and Mikoyan. In the year or so that ensued, he edged his way more and more onto the public stage, but the picture he presented to foreign observers was not impressive. From all appearances, he was an impetuous, obtuse, rough-talking man with something of the buffoon and a good deal of the tosspot in him.
Cool.
So here is something I found about Khrushchev from this thing prepared by the CIA for President Kennedy.
Yes.
He is a man of action and decision when he can see issues clearly, as black or white, but becomes confused and hostile when confronted with shades of gray. He has the self-confidence of a man who knows what is right and what is wrong, and is relatively invulnerable to subtle persuasion or moderately involved intellectual reasoning. It is this quality that makes him appear dedicated to communist ideology, when in reality he may be dedicated primarily to communist progress. His spontaneous reasoning always includes direct reference to progress and production and never to principle or ideology, except in the most literal and catechistic form. This may account for the assumption that he subscribes to the principle that the end justifies the means. Actually, he lacks the philosophical sensitivity to understand such a principle. In all probability, he regards himself as a man of good intentions, fighting for a just cause, and with his pragmatic viewpoint, is completely incapable of perceiving that any system which can produce such obvious good could have evolved from an ideology that is bad. In short, his dedication to communism derives much more faith in the system than in understanding it.
Well, some of that's a little bitchy. I think like Khrushchev was flawed and obviously aided and abetted the murder of many people. He did try to set about reforms and advancements in Russia based on what I have read, and also did try very hard to improve the lives of Russians as compared to his predecessor. He also sent the dog to space and launched the Sputnik program. I think that's a good thing. I think that the space race was a galvanizing, exciting moment in America.
And he did express regret for banning Dr. Zhivago.
I think it's also worth noting that he was allowed to retire from his job. He was allowed to retire when Brezhnev took over and given a pension rather than having him and his entire family and everyone who worked for them murdered or put into prison.
In this last sequence where we see we see Maria playing, and we see Patty Considine sitting in the booth enjoying the beautiful music and not bugging out, and then the camera moves up to the photograph of Khrushchev in uniform, and then to all the officials sitting in the balcony, and we see Brezhnev behind him with the note that Brezhnev eventually pushes Khrushchev out. And that's our movie, folks. There's also, I really like how they did the end sequence with pictures of people and then their faces being scratched out.
Yeah. Yeah. We do have a little bit of awards talk. This movie received a ton of critical acclaim. It was on Barack Obama's favorite films list of 2017. It has made appearances on various best movies of the century lists. It was nominated for 2 British Academy Film Awards, one of which was for Outstanding British Film, the other for Best Screenplay, and also 13 British Independent Film Awards, 4 of which it won. Production design, costumes, makeup, and Best Supporting Actor for Simon Russell Beale.
It's great.
We did have some choice dialogue. I mean, as you mentioned, the whole screenplay just crackles. It's really, really, really well written, and the dialogue is just brilliant.
Actors dream of getting a script like this. So some dialogue that I wrote down from here was that stayed with me was, "That's how you turn a Prussian into a bowl of soup," where Khrushchev is talking about throwing the grenades at prisoners to amuse themselves during the war because it was so cold in Stalingrad. Then a line from something Patty Considine says when the conductor falls and hits his head, where he says, "What fucking brainless fire safety fucking idiot put that there?" Also, it'd be simpler and cheaper if they just drove into a river. Your father is dead, your brother is shooting a gun. It's not fine. You're right. A line of Khrushchev's. Who in their fucking mind would want everlasting life, the endless conversation? And finally, from Zhukov, want a job done properly? Call the army.
It's a heartbreaker that Jeffrey Tambor is a monster, because he had a couple of amazing line deliveries of like the "See, we're better as a committee." And also, is he replaceable? I loved like, "I'm sorry, boss. I wish I could take it for you." Like Tambor is wonderful in this movie. He gives an outstanding performance, and I'm sorry that he's not a good person.
I do, God, I that scene at the beginning of Simon Russell Beale and Steve Buscemi jumping into each other with like the fat man bellies bumping into each other so that they look like Teletubbies is so good. All the physical acting in this movie is great. The line delivery is great. I there's so many things where I couldn't ask for anything better.
I thought it was so interesting too, that that this movie was, nominated for a Best Makeup Award, because one thing that they do not go hard on in this movie is like prosthetics and hiding people under makeup to make them look uncannily like the person that they are. And I really appreciated that. Because they looked enough like them that it wasn't necessary. And I think that it allowed the actors to enjoy themselves and have more fun making this movie. You noted at the top the accents. That's a choice that shouldn't necessarily work, to have everyone speaking in their own accent, but it
Mm-hmm.
totally does.
Mm-hmm.
There were many characters who we met and then disappeared along the way, and then they weren't in the movie anymore. And that can sometimes not be a thing that works, and it worked here.
Yes.
This was a really delightful, well-crafted movie.
Yes, I agree. Sarah, can you please give our listeners a quick refresher about how we score movies?
Of course I can. We rate movies on a 1 to 10 scale across 10 areas that we find to be subjectively and or objectively important to most films, but specially tailored to the issues particular to biopics. If you want more details on how we score movies, please scroll down our webpage at biopicapodcaststory.podbean.com. You'll also find a record of our scores from our past episodes. And with that out of the way, let's score this thing. Shall I go first? Or do you want to?
Why don't you go first?
So for outward appearances, I gave it a 9. That's for makeup and hair. For acting and casting, I gave it a 10. Passage of time, 5. Costuming, 8. Quality of the script, 9. Accuracy, 5. Storytelling, 10. Production value, 9. Production direction decision making, 10. Do we care? 3. Didn't really care for any of these people. 7.8.
Okay. My scores were for outward appearances, I gave it a 9. I agree. I felt like they did just enough with the makeup. For acting and casting, I gave it a 10. For passage of time, I gave it a 7. For costuming, I gave it a 9. For quality of the script, I gave it a 10. For accuracy, I gave it a 3.5. For storytelling, I gave it a 10. For production value, I gave it a 9. For production direction decision making, I gave it a 10. And for do we care, I gave it an 8. I was good cop this week, and I used the buy, which brings my score to
Yeah.
9.55.
So that brings us to an 8.67.
I think it deserved that.
Yeah, I agree. So it seems that Death of Stalin has earned itself a second opinion. So second opinion is the element that we have stolen blatantly from How Did This Get Made?
We're both going to go on IMDb right now and find a few 1-star reviews.
I've got a good one here.
Okay.
Okay, this is from Williams-14, written December 27th, 2020. And
Okay.
it is 1 out of 10 stars. Not, period, funny, period. Wow. This was so not funny, people laughed at this. I don't understand people. 6 people found this review helpful.
Williams 14 didn't really list any. The review doesn't need to be multiple paragraphs, and truthfully, we don't bother with those because it would make the show too long. But Williams 14, you could have given like a couple paragraphs of insight into what you found not funny, into what you
Yeah.
into what you found not funny and why it wasn't funny to you.
I will give it this. It is a spoiler-free review.
Unlike this next review, 1 star out of 10, what a joke, written by Z. Pavlice on January 30th of 2024. I think this movie is such a joke. It makes a mockery of some very serious events in history. You can see it in dialogues, in character behavior. Also, I can perfectly understand why it's banned in Russia, and why President Putin called it anti-Russian propaganda. Can't see why it's highly praised by movie critics, because it is highly historically inaccurate. Even Wikipedia says so. I guess it's popular to hate Russia now because of Russia-Ukraine war. Poor Russians, I really feel for them. Also, the subject is intriguing, and I would like to see some serious movies or documentaries about Stalin and the Soviet Union. 4 out of 17 people found this helpful. Did someone working for Putin write this review?
It doesn't have enough like strange typographical errors to be a Putin. You know how like you can like smell a Russian bot on the internet, like in a comment section. It lacks a certain punch of just the telltale signs of someone writing it under duress.
So this has probably been written by some poor idiot who actually believes what Russian bots tell them.
I have one here by Joe IMDb -16016, written on April 6th, 2019. Title, not funny until you abandon your humanity. Ooh. Some of this movie was based on reality, but too much is made up. Also, a better title might be Sick Comedy for Sick Minds. I struggled to laugh and started thinking something must be wrong with me if I'm not laughing all the time. Needless to say, I did not find this comedy funny. Pulp Fiction is another somewhat sick, violent comedy, but in comparison, it's a Disney cartoon movie.
Huh?
Yeah, tell that to the guy who got shot in the back seat of the car. The fact that so many people think this is 7+ stars is scary and says something about the mindset of a sick society. Just my 2 cents. I guess the one whose mind is not right about the boundaries in a civil society over what is acceptable and not. Hey, I got a great idea. Let's make a dark humor version of Schindler's List. I'm sure the public would love it. Maybe an active shooter video game of it. I can't wait. 2 people found this review helpful. I mean, someone did try to make a comedy out of Schindler's List. I mean, not really, but because it came before. But like the day the clown cried, the Jerry Lewis movie, I believe is a comedy about the Holocaust. It's been seen by like 5 people. But I go back to what I said earlier, that yes, this movie is a comedy at points, and I think shows the absurdity of these circumstances, but I don't think at any point we are ever not aware of the death and destruction and pain and suffering that was wrought by the Stalin regime. I think that this movie walks that line really, really well, and manages to really to not dismiss the fact that a bunch of people died.
Yeah. And also when they talk about the accuracy, I think one of the things we've gone into here is like these things are very rarely accurate, and it doesn't actually make that big of a difference to the quality of the film. All right, I have one last one. 1 out of
Okay.
10. Really poor example of a comedy by Jamie Blundell -82252, written on November 1st of 2017. I am not going to think once again about whether this username is someone's full name and their zip code. Really hope it isn't. Really poor example of a comedy. There would be more comedy in going on a night out with Sir Alex Ferguson. Can you look up who that is, Sarah?
I'd be happy to.
When the funniest part was a predictable shuffle. You know you've made a mistake. Honestly, this is comparable to Lincoln in terms of the number of yawns. No. Lincoln was one of a very, very small number of films we gave a perfect 10 to. Them's fighting words, sir. It goes on. I got more.
Don't come for my Lincoln and my parade of character actors.
No. It goes on. I got more enjoyment out of eating popcorn remnants that happened to fall on my t-shirt. You think you're so fucking witty, don't you? Some would say I should have foreseen this when the average age of that showing was 94, but we stuck with it, and that is a decision I regret to this day. I don't recommend anyone puts themselves through this ordeal unless you have sleeping problems. 50 people found this review helpful. 117 people found it unhelpful. So what I want to know, Jamie Blundell -82252, who I'm worried is someone who makes their user handle out of their name and their zip code. Did you hand everyone who was in the movie theater with you beforehand, like something where they could write down their age and then you took an average on it? How do you know they were all 94?
I guess this person has a gift that I don't have, which is being able to look at people and tell their age.
I mean, they could make a dime here and there at a sideshow with that. What are they doing going to the movies?
So
they're missing out on a money-making opportunity if they can accurately guess someone's age by looking at them.
There's a carnival barker role in your future. So I'm very intrigued by this Alex Ferguson insult, because I just looked Alex Ferguson up on the internet and the Wikipedia has provided.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Scottish former professional football manager and player. He was best known for managing Manchester United from 1986 to 2013. He is regarded as one of the greatest managers of all time. He won more trophies than any other manager in the history of football. And I went to see if there was controversies.
Well, what I'm interested in here is, like, none of what you've read implies that he had a reputation for being especially boring, which would make this an effort at sarcasm, or a reputation for being extremely funny, which would make this like a sincere, yeah, I would have had more fun going out with Sir Alex Ferguson. You really can't tell, which makes me wonder if this was written by someone who really hates Manchester United, and not being from the UK, I don't know where to weigh in on that.
I went to the controversies because I heard that and I thought, oh, he must be a terrible person. And it seems like he did like criticize some referees. It seems like he occasionally got into arguments with players. And had a situation where there was a little bit of like trying to get a player from Germany to come play there, and it didn't work out. He was married to his wife from 1966 until her death in 2023. They had 3 sons. He's a lifelong supporter of the Labour Party, and he is an official ambassador for the Glasgow-based dementia charity Playlist for Life, which promotes the use of personally meaningful music in dementia care. He sounds like a horrible human being.
It doesn't sound like he did anything in his athletic career that was in any way unusual for a major league sports coach, like complaining about the ref, making a fuss over getting a specific player that you didn't get. This is all stuff that like normal coaches do. I really don't get the use of his name in this contrast.
I was fully expecting like a Billy Martin situation, who was the manager of the New York Yankees in the 70s and 80s, sporadically because George Steinbrenner would fire him.
Oh, is he the one in The Bronx is Burning with Oliver Platt as Stein? Oh, I love that. I that was
Billy
so
Martin
good.
was straight crazy. But I'm intrigued by this comparison because he sounds like a likable enough dude, but maybe I don't know.
Please, if we have, I see our downloads and I know we have fans in the UK. So if someone can please explain why Alex Ferguson would be brought up and have his name used in this manner as a comparison around boredom, it would be greatly appreciated. And Sara will go over the means of reaching out to us at the end of this. So other stuff you should watch instead, you should definitely watch this movie. It's fun. The actor, it's not fun. The dialogue, and I just said a ton of great things about why you should watch this movie. So also, please consider rereading the work of George Orwell. You probably haven't read Animal Farm since middle school or 1984 since high school, and I would also love to recommend his essay on political language, which is brilliant and highlights some of the things that we see going on in the meetings here. And it contains a piece of writing advice that I have thought of every week of my life since I first came across it senior year of high school, which is a reason why I never describe something by saying that it is not unsomething. I use the actual adjective because George Orwell wrote in this essay, "Would you ever say that a not unblack dog chased a not unwhite sheep across a not ungreen field under a not unblue sky full of not unwhite, not unfluffy clouds?"
That's great advice.
That's some of the best writing advice ever given. Just say the thing outright. Don't do your not uns.
So I am still reading The Power Broker by Robert Caro. It's still great. I am also going to recommend two things that are why I'm fun at parties. First of which is a mini series on Peacock, NBC's streaming channel, called The Devil in Disguise. It is about John Wayne Gacy, but it's actually not about John Wayne Gacy. It is about the victims of his crimes and the police investigation that went on, and about the bravery of the survivors. And it paints a full picture of several of John Wayne Gacy's victims. It's a really outstanding victim-centered story that puts his monstrousness at the center. And Marin Ireland is in it, and she's amazing. I would also recommend, I am listening to an audiobook called The Indifferent Stars Above, which is about the Donner Party. It is fascinating. It is so good. What these people went through is absolutely astonishing. And also, one of the fun facts that I learned from this book, 1 out of 5 children under the age of 10 died in America at that time period. So, we've been talking about like the numbers game of having children a lot on this podcast whenever we leave vaccinated times. And I just thought that was a fascinating figure.
So as you were saying that, I thought the number you were reading off was the figure for children of that age who died on the Donner Party. So I was like, oh, so it wasn't that unusual an amount of child death that happened on the Donner Party.
Oh, no, there was a lot of child death. There was also a lot of children eating their parents. I just thought that general statistic was really interesting, given how much we've talked about that on this show.
But, like, don't all children eat our parents, just not literally?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but this is a case where like children were literally eating their families. Um, it's an insane
Great.
story. I've got so much to talk about at upcoming parties. Um,
I want to recommend a memoir about life under communist China, including the horrors of the Cultural Revolution. Son of the Revolution by Liang Heng is a great book that will remind you of how much communism sucks. I had to read it in college. I wound up reading it twice, and it was very good for counteracting idiot activists who'd annoy me on campus. Sarah, with that, can you please take us out?
I'd be happy to. Just a couple of notes here. Our podcast baby has matured, and we have launched a Patreon, simply an effort to defray some of the costs associated with bringing our show to you. That's platform hosting, recording, equipment, research. Sometimes we pay for movie rentals. Sometimes we have to order a book off the internet, and sometimes we go to see a movie in the theaters, or we may want to hop on mass transit so we can see each other and be in the same place. So we are offering
While
shout outs.
recording, again, you are not, if you are not funding us merely hanging out, you are funding us recording in the same place at the same time, which makes for a much more electrifying episode sometimes. Not
Oh,
much more,
for
somewhat
sure.
more.
Like we don't have fun ever. So we are for now offering shout outs and access to our awful first 3 episodes to anyone who chips in for us. But soon that will be changing. And with that, we'd love to thank Brandon and Gates, who are already signed up. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star review. And subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and tell a friend or plural friends and share us on social media. We hear it helps. You can follow us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, where we have visual aids from our episodes. Our handle on Instagram is at Biopic a Podcast Story. Do check us out there, and we'll link to that in the show notes as well. Please also check out our webpage at biopicapodcaststory.podbean.com to see the official episode ratings for all of the movies we've done so far. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can email us at biopiclistenermailbag@gmail.com. Our theme music is by Ben Patch, and the intro is his song Slater Cannonball, and the outro is Spring Breakers, and you can check him out on Spotify.
Tune in next week when we'll be talking about Kingfish, which is about the Governor Huey Long of Louisiana, who is played by, welcome back to the show, John Goodman, and we will have a special guest that week.
Indeed, we will.
Sarah, tell us about our guest next week.
Oh, okay. So we will be welcoming Glenn from The Awesome Village. It's a very fun podcast, and we're excited to have him on the show to share about his experience as a NOLA-based individual who knows a great deal about the Kingfish Huey Long, and will fill us in on that. And we're really excited to have him.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that. And with that, good night to the earnest and the cynical.
Indeed. Good night, and I hope there are more earnest than cynical.
Good night, Sarah.
Good night, Rena.